Well, what I should say first is thank you. Almost all of you, in fact, I think all of you without exception are dear friends from a long time, so thank you all for coming. Tonight I'm going to be reading to you from my long poem, Impluvium. As most of you know, over the last 20 years, Dee and I and our kids have been coming and going from Spain. Over the last 10 years, and in the course of 3 year-long trips during that period, I've been working on this poem. Each year tends to produce, or has produced, one long sequence of sections, one long sort of cycle of poems. I'm going to be reading to you from the middle cycle, which I wrote in 2008 while I was in Spain. I won't hide from you the fact that this is unlike anything you will have ever heard. So I have become aware as I've practiced this, as I've tried to get it ready to read to you, that actually people would benefit from a good deal of help in the beginning, of actually orienting you as to how this poem works and what it's about. So I'm going to spend a little time now giving you a sense of where Impluvium came from, why I would do something so weird, and also try to anchor it in some specific information that might make it a little easier, a little more comfortable to listen to. 10 years ago when I started this, I found myself frustrated with the poetry that I was writing. I found myself uncomfortable feeling that it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. There were two main discomforts. One was that here I was as a poet trying to synthesize, to pull material together. And at the same time, I was feeling that the world that I lived in, that I was feeling and seeing every day, was actually just coming apart at the seams. And so that a poetry of synthesis began to seem more and more, A, difficult to do, and B, not accurate to the world that we were living in. At the same time, I began to have physical trouble using personal pronouns in my poetry. I started out not being able to use I. That wasn't something I planned, that was just something that happened. So I began using he, and then that began feeling uncomfortable. I actually found myself using he and she, going back and forth. Obviously something was amiss, but I didn't know what it was. So when I got to Spain in 2000, I guess it was in 2003, I started experimenting, and naturally, almost instantaneously, this other form, this other way of going about poetry just sprang up, almost directly out of the head of Zeus. It was just there on the page. So I'll lay out for you how it works. The word impluvium, as some of you may know, is an architectural term, or it was a Latin term describing an aspect of the classical Roman home. The classical Roman home was formed in a square around a central courtyard. In that central courtyard there was a pool where all the rain, it was a catchment basin, basically all the rain from the house was funneled into the pool. And then that pool would be, the water in the pool would be used for drinking, for watering, for all the family needs. So it was sort of a gathering in of everything that fell in the house. So the idea of the impluvium became the central metaphor, the central idea of the poem. That what I wanted to do was to be able to take in everything that fell, to use everything, and then use it for all kinds of purposes. So the impluvium is the central metaphor of the poem. The way it worked was, I found that I was using 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 different voices. The voices very quickly became sort of familiar and standardized in the poem. Now, if you were to read it, which is hard, you can do it, but it is hard, you'll see that the poem, Different voices are actually different columns. This one's a little hard to see, but they're in different columns down the page. And so you can kind of see what's happening. Now what I'm going to have to do in reading to you is try to, with my voice, indicate. And so you can try to follow. I hope you'll be able to follow the different voices as they come. So I'll give you some idea of what those voices are. Everyone with me so far, right? The first voice you'll hear is actually just a private joke. It's the academic voice. Like in old textbooks or works of nonfiction, there would be the little chapter summaries beforehand. So I usually include a little chapter summary of what's coming up. Now my own twist on this is the chapter summary often has very little to do with what's going on in the poem. But that's not totally true. It's never a direct reflection of what's happening, but it's almost like a harmonic, like if you sat with a long time and maybe worked off to the edges, this is indeed what it would be about. So it reflects what's going on, but not directly. Sometimes not at all, but that's just my joke. Sometimes at a distance, sometimes as a harmonic. So that's the first voice. The other voice you'll hear is what I call the meteorological voice, which just describes what's happening that day, whether it's day or night, whether it's raining, whether it's stormy, the sound of the storm. Often it's raining. Not so much in the sections I'm reading today, but often it's raining. Partly because we live in Asturias, where it rains all the time, but also because rain is one of the images, one of the central carrying motifs of the poem, of the rain falling, the rain at the end of the world, but also the rain that brings things back. So that's the other voice. There's a main narrator voice, which is the narrator narrating. Then there is his internal voice, which is that little mutter that we all have that we very rarely articulate, that little voice that talks, that doesn't say anything out loud, but often just debates with yourself. So you hear that voice too. There is a voice that's announced by item, which is a voice that in my own mind I stole from John Dos Passos from the USA trilogy, where he includes bits of information. So that's information. When you hear item, it's a little kind of anchor, a little bit of solid stuff. So that's one voice. Then there's the strangest voice of all. Again, I didn't plan this, which I, for want of another way to describe it, I call the voice of Athena, which is the voice of a god. Now, my idea of gods, as it's developed over the course of doing these 3 separate cycles of Impluvium poems, is of these unemployed beings wandering around the earth, attached vaguely, maybe like the old Lares and Penates of the Roman home, attached vaguely to objects, maybe wanting to stay in a given spot or another, but having absolutely no utility, and frustrated. So they occasionally try to intrude in human life, occasionally might go so far as to commit an act like a poltergeist would, of actually shaking things up a little bit, but basically doing nothing. So that's the god voice. And Athena, of course, the symbol of Athena, or her animal familiar, is the owl, and that voice often speaks in the form of an owl. And in puns that would come directly from the voice of an owl, you'll see. Puns work all the way through the poem. I'm constantly working with puns. So that's the basic layout. Okay, sounds hard, but I'm going to take it slow. The first section, I'm going to read 3 sections tonight. I'll keep it short, because I know this is a lot. I'm going to read 3 sections tonight. The first section, a middle section, and the end, strangely enough. So I'll start with the first section. I want to say a little bit about it. I'm going to just get some water. The first section, as in all the different cycles that I've written, on the 3 separate Impluvium cycles that I've written so far, and who knows how many more there will be, the first poems are always feeling their way. And they tend to, the words tend to be staccato, they tend to be confusing, They tend to be disjointed, because that's where I was at. I mean, that's no excuse, but that is a mirror of the process of coming to terms with beginning this descent, so to speak, into what would be the themes of the year. Now, the way to listen to this, and forgive me for trying to tell you how to listen, but I'm just offering suggestions. You listen to it not driving yourself nuts trying to make associations or meanings out of it, but listen to it almost as if you were listening to a piece of chamber music, a piece of music where there are different instrument voices, different words that come in and just exist in your consciousness for a little bit and then go on. And maybe they resonate with other words and maybe they don't. But let it just flow over you. There's lots of Spanish too, but it's really, some of the Spanish you'll understand just naturally, maybe some you won't. My own Spanish is bad, so it's bad Spanish, some of it. So again, let it just be there and hear it as it comes, especially in this first section. Before I start, I'll just give you a couple explanatory notes that just might kind of anchor you to the poem a little bit. San Expedito is a marvelous saint who, for for a believer, is the saint of lost causes. For the irreverent, universally in Spain, San Expedito is the saint of parking spaces, i.e. finding them. So that's San Expedito. There's a whole little thing you say when you're looking for a parking space about San Expedito. The poem itself is anchored in a trip I took in the beginning of the year in October to San Sebastian, which is the beautiful city in the far east part of País Vasco, of the Basque country, where the Spanish kings used to come to summer. There's a beautiful boardwalk by the beach, and we went one Sunday. Went to see a exhibition of the painter Julian Schnabel, and then went for a walk on the boardwalk at the end of the afternoon. The Spanish name, the Basque name for San Sebastian is Donostia. Dan hostias means to give someone a whack, or give someone a whack, so that's a pun. País Vasco is the name of Basque country. Pius Bosco is a bad pun about St. Bosco. Wazirs and Lido Nord were the streets that were the corner of the house, of the beloved house where I spent summers as a kid. So that just explains where those names came from. So I'll start reading section 1. This cycle of Impluvium is dedicated to the poet Ted Hughes, and it comes with the inscription, "I attempt a firmer embodiment." Section 16. Section 16 includes an invocation, an ejaculation, a preamble. It involves a digression. It concerns a digression about an afternoon spent in San Sebastian. It is, under everything, a discourse on the passage of time, and in the course of that discourse discusses Julian Schnabel, his wife, the Basque Olatz Schnabel, and the painter Cy Twombly. Rain. Who? To who? Peter? Paul? Faints, sorties, thitherings of voices, retreats. Passerella, Paul, La Quinella, cheery like clockwork, down to La Franca, Saturdays. Paul, item, passerella, puente pequeño, hecho de materias ligeras. She did die, did she? Who? Who? Un puente. Pequeño. Aquello, no. Ese, feo. Romano. De piedra. No. Ese, no. Trickle of water in the undermurk. Renacuajos. Ortigas. De. Renegades and hostages. Bullet in the neck, the head. Oh, pious Bosco, the light, silent. Item, boardwalk, Saturday afternoon, October. Oh, pious Bosco, the light, slight, bright, a headache. Bright. Item, sails, distant, concordant. Item, small children euthanized in prams. Belligerent day, cocksure. Azure. An afterdoom, cocksure. San Expedito, San Expedito. Are you sure? Cars, una rata aplastada. Are you serious? Cars. Are you sure? More cars. Are you sure? Prepáranos un sitio, San Expedito. Day. Gibble gabble, snivel snabble, stet, thief. Sly, sideways glance, impromptu, more fucking cars. Thief, are you sure? Years, these years, wazirs, summer, glorious summer. Garbled from across the vastness of the universe, straight from planet Olas. She gorgeous or what? Messages to me. Or what? To me. Oh, that's beside the point. Ho! Ha! To me. Bleeding disc, dark crimson, violet, velvet, purple red. To me. Simper, siren cry, husmeando, gibble gabble, hurgando, snivel snabble, husmeando. Oh, pious Bosco, I am contrite. Why? Yes, contrite. I, wazirs, Lido Nord, wazirs, corner of summer, all those years. Who to, who to, who to, who to. Small bridge, delicate, not stone. Item, heat waves, mirages, mosquitoes, midges, the odd jellied speck, inconspicuous. Water boatman, haze of pollen, haze of dust. Item, rainbow, mirages, few sticks, etc., not stone. Crowd, spreckled white. Clouds. Tumulus groundswell, tremulous expectations, cumulus crowds. Cirrus? Are you Cirrus? We? Really? Nimbus? Not me. Not us. Harp. Continual. altered status? Yes, afflatus, horns, continual, single, annoying voice. Violin. Mackerel sky, flecked, flocked, sequined in light. Fucked. Triangle, timpani, sackbut. Fecund, fecund, slot, slut. Slit of light, huggin' horizon, chip huggers, single, pinkish sail, last. Nighthawk, charred, fall afoul, night fowl. Nightfall, night, fall, night. San Expedito, moonrise, moon, gravid, moon, mothfall, sweet call, mouthfuls, mouthfalls, secret, sweet, sweet suets, suits, seersucker, sweet, moonfall, moon. Stirrings, simperings, a pink slit, ship huggers, her eyes on, fay. Paunchy slash, belly of light, midriff, rhododactylos eos, grossly figured dawn. Day, day, day. Te juro con los pies hundidos. Item, ley de la memoria histórica. Ley de mamario histérico. Civil War. Psst, José Antonio, olvídatelo. Item, ley del punto final. De la puta final. A hard-on man, his satyr factions. José Antonio. De. Con las manitas, ¿entiendes? Con las manitas. Demonstrates. Paco, for clarity. Standard gesture. Ho, ha, marica, maricón. Olvídate, olvídatelo. De. Te juro con los pies hundidos. Circe, a siren cry, con cuerpos a cuestas, con muertos a cuestas. Silence. Hope. Suddenly. Day. How they come. How they grow. Pansies, petunias, funny naked stalks, geraniums rank in the passageway, gregarious under clutch of leaves. Nightfall. Mudin calling, calling. Viene otro, otra, otra, calling. Nightfall. And me, barefoot, on tiptoe, mincing, cautious, tipping the meniscus. And me, brick path, geraniums, slugs, slime paths, dried, driven to a glisten, cellophane causeways. Me, wazirs, day and night. The moon's phases, offbeat, repetitive tootle, night and day, twiddle, day, night, day, twee, night, day, night, inútil, día tras día, inútil, día tras día, noche tras noche, que no me interesa, que no me interesa. night after night, day after day. Que no! Inútil, day after day. Twiddle, day after day. Wazirs. Who? Who? Day, night, approaching, curious. Night, day, graceful, their eyes, curious. Day, night, their clothes, night, day, their eyes, dia tras dia, their hands, arms, dia tras dia, kings, satraps and sadducees, noche tras noche, prelates and potentates. Who? Fuck off! Who? I need to get going. You too? I feel I need to get going. I need you to get going. San expedito. Noche. Prepáranos un sitio. Noche. Un puente de materias ligeras. Noche. Una tarde. San Sebastián. Dan hostias a ellos. A stink. Dia. Gotta get going. Noche. A talon. A wing. Dia. Dia. Un hombre. Machito en la frente. So pass. Así. Así. Queer. Marica. Queer. Glog. Brog. Glaucopis Athena. So pass 35 years. So we're going to take a deep breath. I'll take a deep breath. That was section 1.
Bravo.
The second section I'll read to you is from the middle of the poem. It's where it's one of the climaxes of the poem, one of the places where it hits its stride and figures its subject out. That year in Spain and Europe, there were two books published, 2 novels published about the Eastern Front, World War II. Vasily Grossman's Life and Fate, and a book by Jonathan, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Lytle, called The Kindly Ones, both about the horrors of the German campaign in the Soviet Union. Plus, I think being in Spain, a place where a civil war had occurred within living memory, and which was never referred to, but which was always present. I think that my own preoccupation with the particular genius of the 20th century for slaughter is understandable. So that's just as a background to the poem. A couple of, again, things to just anchor you specifically in the poem. Mangold is the English word for sugar beet. Joseph Mangold, you can see the pun coming, was an abstract painter. Homo lupus homini, usually said homo homini lupus, means man, a wolf to man. The poem begins with an inscription from the English poet David Jones, who wrote about his experience in World War I. That's who David Jones is. So, Section 20. Section 20 concerns itself with a visitation, the apparition, the startling apparition of the number 1. It discusses its unusual auditory aspect. It debates whether it's a token, a warning, a premonition, a sign, decides it's probably insignificant, but if it were significant, it explores what that significance might be. It consults precedents, and as a coda, it talks about the harrowing of hell. So here is the inscription from David Jones is, "The pulp of mangolds spattered the spotless breech block of the number 1 gun." I just got to say, if you ever get a chance to read that, I've forgotten the title of the book, but it is an amazing book. The pulp of mangolds spattered the spotless breech block of the number 1 gun. Wind, wind, gusts, slaps, door creaks, house groans, easings, buffets, sudden silences, crashes there. Days such as these, surely he has scorned our griefs and buried our sorrows. Days such as these, days such as these, little bullet, you could have been a friend. Days such as these, homo lupus homini. Days such as these, days such as this, homo lupus homini. This day, this one day. What a mistake. Even the earth gets it wrong sometimes. Sometimes even the earth opens its legs idly, thoughtlessly receives the unnecessary corpse. Often, I tell you, often. You're telling me. Line of clouds out to sea, the sea beneath a silver sheet, the clouds a royal of blackened air, the sea unmaking itself in foil, in a smudge of light. The line of clouds a black knife at the throat of the sea. What does it mean? What does it mean? Means rain. Means rain. Yep. And wind. You bet. Means rain. Golpes. Rachas. Crush of air. What is a masterpiece, for example? Who is this mangold? Wrong time, place. This man gold, this gyre, this radiance of bodies, this giddy, tight coil, Van der Weyden, Michelangelo, Frangelico, radiance of colors, the radiance of angels. Tight limit of embroidery at the edge of a gown, chased with gold, a gelid, sacramental blue, unmoving, glittering, spiraling in golden stasis. Man gold, man meat, hue man, florid, fervent earth, hirviendo, hirviendo, fermenting. Bubbling of bodies, flesh, vomit of bodies earth no longer wants, vomited to paradise. Why can't they stay still? No, how not? How not? Anonymous Bosch, this. Corpses rising, corpses falling like water rising and falling. A circle. Now here's the rain. The earth groans, swells, heaves, and the dead are returned to the sky. The good dead. Are there any other? The good dead. Naked is the day. The great and glorious dead, proud of the moon that made them, gave them their strange color. The bad dead fall like leaves. Corpses risen from the trench. The fosse, la fossa, il fosso, ditch, trench, pit, zanja, pit. Corpses risen from the trench rise like wind-blown leaves. 1. He extends one finger. 1, the man who sits at the edge of the trench. 1, his patience. 1, the many bodies lying profligate, ill at ease in their new surroundings, still keeping their bundles close in case. 1, the rules of their new world. 1, the new requirements. 1, their leftovers. 1, their left behinds. 1, the toothbrushes and the dirty scraps. 1, the finger tiptoeing the trigger, the life lever tipping, tipping. 1, the very hour of this occurrence. 1, the days that have followed since. 1, the bullet deep in its chamber. 1, his gun. 1, his screaming impotence. A ring, for example, gets lost, gets trampled in a field, fends for itself in the grass. A man or woman falls into the sea, dissolves in that spittle, that bleak saliva. This we accept. We are sad. Yes, I am sad. I tell you, I am sad. The thing is a weight in my head, but the raw earth makes me cold. Those neat embankments, the precise incisions, an exact gap the size of a man, or men, or men. So Lorca leans an instant on his shovel, trembling. Or anyone, just anyone. Does the moon also tremble? Does the planet touch the brakes, crawl to a stop at roadside at the very lip of the ditch? No. Nah. Yes. The bullet, in agony, crawls back up the barrel of the gun. Good bullet. Good bullet. Molten, the light off the sea. Surf poundings, light freaks, spatters, drops, grind of the waves. So that's the second section. The poet Osip Mandelstam, the Russian poet Osip Mandelstam, has a wonderful moment where he describes, or his wife describes for him, the following, that he wrote in cycles of poems. They were individual poems, but they always occurred in cycles. They always were grouped. And he knew when he was getting to the end of a cycle, and I've loved this, always loved this idea, when he got to the end of the cycle, he'd begin getting images of stars. And so he always hated it when the stars began intruding in his poems, because he knew that he was coming to the end of that hydraulic push and that he would have to start over again at some point. So he hated the image of stars. With me, in the years that I've spent in Spain working on this, I know sometimes I've worked up to the very end, sometimes it's happened earlier when I discover that I'm coming to the end of that cycle, of that push for that year's version of Impluvium. For me, I know I'm coming to the end when the images of America begin coming back. It makes sense, but it comes in. Yeah, no, it makes sense. So this last section, you will see where I'm going. Now, the poem. This poem is in dialect. It's like no dialect you've ever heard. It is as I am fond of saying, it is absolutely authentic in its complete inauthenticity. So, but it sounded right, so I've persisted with it. The poem is dedicated to a person who's here tonight, Pancho Burke, my dear friend, who described to me an absolutely nightmarish trip that he took to visit his family in Montana by way of Greyhound bus. So dedicated to Pancho Burke. And it has as its inscription a quote from the American folk song Duncan and Brady, been on the job too long. So Pancho Burke, forever in the mind, north of Kingman, south of Bozeman. And been on the job too long. This America is hard to get a hold on. 'Tis. Persistent rain besoozling us, impapping us to brains, fuddling all the void wakes, the eternal prowler pants, those lowly dump tasters swilling their own slops, making me think of summer and of you. But shoosh, stand pat. I hears that singing in the wind. I hear the highways and the byways and the sideways singing. I feels that American breeze, that faint whiff of something, that faint whiff of rotten oranges, bad cheese. Oh, staggerly. Oh, funky and junky. Oh, police. Why does I just sing out? Why don't I just get out? Just leave. Auto abuses, leaving all day for other parts. But who is I fooling? Who is this fiddling fiduciary me? This big shit in a little shitter. This little dick in a big sea. And why is I talking in this foolishness? This half blackface, half cracker manner to which I knows from nothing. Y'all tells me. Can't find my own voice. Where'd it got to? But this is me. This is me. The me of old. From crust to crust. And flea to shiny flea. Oh, tempora. Oh, mores. Oh, sarnafin. Oh, narc angels of the heavenly heist. At least we safe. At least we secure. For round about the havens they has thrown a missy defense system, that's for sure. A missy defense system against incoming pizzles. Some kind of chase titties belt what understands the foreign and only allows in bona fide American. Sure missed a meeting all that sizzle. And now we's gauging in a national erection. Now we's raging in a civil war to see if some poor nation so foundered might long endure. Omniimpotent, omnipurient, and slugfest God, watch over these here pugilists below. They be need attending. They likes the low blow, the cheap shot to the Orbeus tenders.
There is a space in hell what God's two holes. Mark Clinton. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar. But who the flip is Caesar? He be dead. They stuffs their pockets with the easy bread and boast their impudence, their splendid obliviosity to cash. My ass, dear Lord, my ass. Riding toward some city in the copious dark, I see these dusky fornications rise out of the otherwise, out of the light blistered sky. And in those lights, raw as an infection, I seed America at last. I seed my home. Except for some poor bastard sleeping in the back of that bus, I was most absolute and profoundly alone. I should have said at the beginning a special thanks to Destiny and Steve, whose place this is. I know she's still here, but we all, as all of us who have the show here, are very grateful to have been given this chance for this wonderful